So I recorded them from below, and then by the time I climbed out of the crater, they were still shooting. So I got a little closer and I recorded, and that's the sound I actually put into the film. With the train, there was a train track right behind me, but the train came. I can't remember if it was before or after the shot. It wasn't during the sync either. So those are two places where those sounds interested me to use, but they didn't actually occur at the time the film was being made, but they within minutes or half hour. And I don't know, I did both, I was hoping a train actually would come when I was shooting, but that didn't happen. But I mean, I don't think of these as that I have to present exactly what happened, but what I wanted to do is present a sound and image that really gave you the feel that I had when I was there.
So that seems to be, as I recall, consistent with your philosophy of sound from the California Trilogy as well?
Yeah.
And also for next week's film?
No, next week's film, nothing was shot in sync, and all the sounds used in it are from prior films. So 10 Skies is completely cheated. But well, I did it for one reason, because I wanted to do something different. And then I used the same gunshots in the Skies film. So if you've seen the lakes, you hear those gunshots again. So that's a clue that sound comes. And then I use migrant workers talking from El Valley Central, and there's a I could catalog all of them. The sounds are sounds from all my prior, or a number of my prior films, and I mean, in a way that works a little bit against what I wanted to do in 10 Skies, because I was very interested in the way the sky is a function of the landscape below. So if you're filming in the mountains, you'll get air currents that come up, and there's a shot in 10 Skies where the cloud just keeps building up and up and up. And in that, so that shot I have a place up in the Sierra, so that was shot there. And I use sound that's the one I used from El Valley Central, so it's down in the Central Valley, where you wouldn't get that kind of cloud rising. But nobody knows that. I suppose they could have been grapes in the foothills somehow, but they weren't. I mean, those grape pickers were at the southern part of the San Joaquin, where it's very flat, and you just wouldn't have that kind of cloud structure there. But most of the time, the sounds that I use could have happened there. I mean, I was thinking of putting on a bullfight and stuff like that, but I never got to do that, since I didn't ever film a bullfight.
So the biographical element, though, is very...
Yeah, it was just playful on my part, just to keep myself interested. So they're companion films, but they're much different, because there's, that's a big difference. But most of the time, certain skies can appear almost anywhere. So, yeah.
Why is it important to film and not just do slides? And like slides capture what you felt when you were.
Slides could perhaps capture a particular feeling of place, for sure. I mean, there's good paintings and there's good photographs that do that. But I believe that landscape is really a function of time, so one has to view something over time. And even a 10-minute period isn't quite long enough, but it gives you a sense of change at least. And in the skies, it's even more dramatic than in the lakes, the way the skies change over a 10-minute period. So I wanted, you know, I want to show that kind of change, and if I would merely have a series of 7 slides over 10 minutes, it would then you wouldn't have a continuous change. You would have this and this and this and this. Like some of the frames in the skies, you think nothing happens, and then if I would show you this juxtaposed against this, you would see it's completely different, and yet it happens so slowly that you experience something much different than what's still photographed. And plus, I can also use sound, of course, which is a big element in these.
You talk about how the horizon line, you really depend on that, or use that as the structure of the...
Well, I'm a big fan of symmetry, and I actually even like fascist architecture because it's so symmetrical. And so the horizon line is, I mean, I first used it heavily in El Valley Central because I became so aware of it in the Central Valley where it's so flat. And of course with lakes, you always, most of the time, have a horizon line. I could shoot the lake without it, I suppose, or I could not put it in the middle. But by putting in the middle, I feel it gives more strength to the image.
Kind of like a uniformity through the whole thing. It's almost like one view, but variations of that.
Yeah, I want you it's kind of being democratic to the image in this film, that all the images are going to be the same. I mean, that was my initial problem that I set up for myself, is to create these identical frames and then try to find something in them that would give you a uniqueness in each lake. And I think they're extremely different. I mean, I would argue that none of them look alike.
There's a lot of details that are, I'd say, kind of almost at the limit of, almost at the scale of the film frame, like the birds flying sometimes and the cars going across the bridge. Were you aware of kind of what was going to sort of, because obviously there are some details that are probably lost because they're just too small.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that seems to be right on that limit.
Well,
were you thinking about that?
of course I'm thinking about it when I do the cars. I actually want them to disappear into the grain as they go across the bridge. I mean, the birds that fly across the frame in Lower Red Lake, there's a number of them that go across this way, and then there's a lot of seagulls that happen that kind of come out of nowhere when they fly towards the camera. So I kind of like that the film can't register something when it's that small. I mean, I'm really opposed to shooting in a bigger scale for many reasons, but mostly political, and to somehow justify the cost of that. But I also wouldn't be able to make this kind of film with a heavy camera and without a lot of help. And I go by myself and put it in the car and bring it out and shoot, you know.
So you're in part of saying, I mean, why you shoot 16 as opposed to 35?
Yeah.
Is part what you're saying
Yeah. But I mean, obviously I'm pushing 16 millimeter to its limits, and I certainly have pushed the projection to its limits and really challenged projectionists. And I challenged my lab too, which lab work gets worse and worse in 16. So I kind of think I can't take the stress anymore of it. So I may not shoot 16 anymore. So I don't know.